Aloha and mahalo for joining us. I think we're ready to get started. We'll be recording tonight's meeting, so it will be available for viewing from our Hawaiian Electric website, as well as on our Facebook and YouTube pages. If you haven't yet, please mute your computer or phone. We set aside some time tonight for questions, and we'll ask you to unmute at that time. Welcome, everyone, to Hawaiian Electric's virtual community meeting from Maui. As you may know, we've been making our way towards transitioning Hawaii to more clean energy, and tonight we'll be sharing information about plans to seek proposals for renewable firm energy for our island. And this third round of requests for proposals, or as you'll hear us call it tonight, RFP, is only for variable and firm renewable generation and storage technologies. Through the RFP, we're going to be able to receive competitive bids that may offer better prices, gives diversity to the type of renewable energy resources, improve the reliability and resilience of our system, and enable the retirement or deactivation of fossil fuel generators at our power generation plants at Kahului and Ma'alaya. I'm Mahina Martin, Director of Community Affairs on Maui, and I'll be serving as tonight's moderator. Joining me from Hawaiian Electric is Colton Ching, Senior Vice President of Planning and Technology, and Greg Shimokawa, Manager of Energy Procurement. Next slide, please. We welcome any questions and comments that you may have tonight. When our team is done with the presentation and sharing information about the RFP, we're going to help answer any questions folks may have and hear any comments you want to share with us. So there are different ways to ask a question or offer a comment. You can email us. You can see it on your screen there before you, Maui Renewable RFP at hawaiianelectric.com. And if you're joining us on Facebook Live, you can post a comment in the comment box right under the meeting. And if you're joining us on Microsoft Teams online or calling in by phone and you want to speak, please wait until the part of the meeting where we're going to open up for questions. I'll do my best to make sure that we can answer the questions in the order they're received, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can during this meeting. But if we don't get to your question during the meeting, or you have one that you think of after tonight, please email us at mauirenewablerfp@hawaiianelectric.com, and we'll get back to you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Colton Ching to begin tonight's presentation. Colton?
Thank you, Mahina, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I guess it's almost nighttime. We really appreciate everyone's time and engagement in this process, especially now with so many things going on in our daily lives. As Mahina mentioned, we're launching a new procurement that is seeking both firm and variable sources of renewable generation. And we're here tonight to share information about the reasons for issuing this RFP or request for proposal for Maui, considerations including in the draft, including the RFP process as well as the schedule. Most importantly, though, we hope to receive your feedback this evening on the elements that you would like to see included as part of the RFP to make it better. As you know, Hawaii is facing very unique short, mid, and long-range challenges that require an approach to decarbonization that examines, all sources and all options for solutions, while balancing competing needs that are also very important. While we currently have extensive efforts underway in our long-range integrated grid planning process, this RFP is intended to address our energy needs over the near term. Now, we'll dive into some of the objectives for the Stage 3 procurement. Next slide, Sheena. Back one, Sheena. Sorry about that. I got ahead of myself. Our procurements and planning efforts require balancing competing needs, and we need to consider trade-offs. This is evident in the objectives we're trying to meet in our Stage 3 RFP. Our planning must address climate change and at the same time factor in the affordability of electrical service, especially with the volatility of the cost of fuels that we're experiencing now. By entering into power purchase agreements or PPAs with renewable energy providers, it helps us to stabilize the cost of energy for Maui for the duration of these contracts. These PPAs often have fixed pricing or at least have a good portion of their contract partially fixed, which helps to delink the cost of energy from the cost of fossil fuels. You may currently experience spikes in your monthly bill when fossil fuel prices rise, as we're seeing now. And so we are trying to lessen or eliminate these spikes so that all customers can better plan their budgets and have a better sense of what their bills may be on a monthly basis. The more renewable PPAs that we have in place with fixed pricing, the less we will be tied to the rising and uncertain and unstable costs of importing fuels. Resilience and reliability are also critical for our societal infrastructure, as well as for our national security. At the end of the day, we need the lights to stay on, and this must be factored into our procurements. Using a combination of renewable firm generation with renewable variable weather-dependent generation, such as solar and wind, will help us to diversify our resource portfolio and make that portfolio and our generation system more resilient. We are also working to modernize our current electric system, as many of our current components have been in operation for more years than I've been alive, 50 plus years. Ensuring a modernized grid is critical to that resilience and reliability that our customers expect. Obviously, a large objective is to meet the state's renewable energy goals and our decarbonization goals. While we believe this RFP will lead us on this path, we also recognize that the market for renewable energy, and really all markets, have recently been upended. COVID-19 has led to closures of manufacturing plants for a number of components, leading to supply chain shortages. It has also caused major shipping delays due to shortages of workers at ports. These issues are now being further impacted by the war in Ukraine. In addition, recent changes in law and government actions have also made a major impact to the solar industry. And we are carefully watching these issues and trying to find creative ways to keep our procurements on track despite such market uncertainties in order to meet our energy objectives. Next slide, please. Thanks. Before I pass the presentation over to Greg to dive into the meat of the Stage 3 RFP, I want to stress again that we are here tonight to get your feedback. Community participation has been an integral part of our planning process for renewable energy procurements to date. As an example, the feedback the community provided for our shared solar or community-based renewable energy RFPs was extremely helpful and insightful. With your help, we were able to develop ideas on how to incorporate recommendations in the RFPs, many of which were approved by the Public Utilities Commission. This slide highlights some of those key changes. For example, we heard from the community that there was a preference, if at all possible, to avoid the use of agricultural lands. Therefore, we've included a non-price criteria giving higher points to proposals that use lands zoned commercial or industrial, or land that has greater impervious cover or uses reclaimed lands. We've developed procedural improvements to further ensure the protection and preservation of cultural resources as well. We've added non-price criteria incentivizing the use of local labor and prevailing wages based on community feedback to create local jobs. To make sure communities know if they will be impacted by project developments, we've incorporated requirements for developers to provide monthly updates on their construction progress. We've also heard that communities hosting these projects want to ensure that they are not unduly burdened. So for the first time ever with our Stage 3 RFPs, we are requiring IPPs to provide community benefits packages to address critical needs in host communities. Next slide, please. We've taken these documented recommendations from the community and have applied them to our Stage 3 RFPs and plan to provide them and use them in our future RFPs as well. Our goal is to improve and refine each renewable procurement with your input, and we look forward to hearing from you tonight and throughout the process. Next slide. So I want to transition into some definitions. And our planning and generation resources that we add to our portfolio must address climate change, as I mentioned earlier, and factor in the affordability of electric service, especially with the volatility of fossil fuels that we're currently experiencing. Resiliency and reliability are vital for our critical societal infrastructure, including the electric system. To do this, we need a diverse portfolio. Renewable resources, such as variable or often called as available energy resources like solar and wind, but also hydro and ocean power, are intermittent and can vary over time. The challenge with variable generation, or the characteristic of variable generation, that is not going to always be available when you need it, and not available 100% of the time, based upon the contracted capacity of the facility. However, variable generation may offer a very valuable, economical, and plentiful source of renewable generation to the energy portfolio. Next slide. One thing to mention on the last slide. So, as I mentioned at the very beginning, variable renewable generation is part of what we're seeking as part of the RFP, Stage 3 RFP. The next slide, thank you, Shana, for going back. On the next slide, the other component that we're looking for as part of the Maui Stage 3 RFP is renewable firm power generation. And the distinction between variable and renewable generation is that between variable and firm renewable generation is that firm renewable generation is, as the name implies, firm. The resource is there on demand. It typically comes from what's called a synchronous generator or a synchronous machine, but it's a resource that is able to provide 100% of the capacity, the contracted capacity, at any given time. When our customers need that higher output from the facility, that resource is available, and it can be dispatched at that level, whatever is needed, for as long as needed, except when the resource is out for maintenance or is experiencing some sort of equipment or mechanical issue. Firm generation must not be energy limited or weather dependent. That helps to ensure that the resource is able to produce the output that's demanded, again, when needed for as long as needed. So as great as wind and PV and other variable renewable generators are, even when they're paired with storage, although it helps to make them more dispatchable, it's not the same, does not provide the same qualities, does not provide the same operations functions, and ultimately reliability and resilience functions as firm renewable generation. So we're really looking in this RFP to have both. And Greg will get into the details of our Stage 3 RFP next, and I'll pass it over to him.
Thank you, Colton. And I want to extend my thanks to everyone for taking the time to be here this evening as well. So what I'd like to talk about now is just to get into a little bit more of the details, the highlights of this RFP. So like Colton said, this RFP is open to both variable and firm generation. And so we have two different targets that we're seeking. So on the energy side, we're seeking a minimum of 180 gigawatt hours per year of renewable dispatchable generation. And then on the firm side, we're seeking 30 to 40 megawatts of firm capacity. So capacity, like Colton said, that's the maximum output that a generator can produce. And we recognize that many generators don't operate always at their full capacity all the time. And so up above and beyond that 40 megawatts that we're seeking, we're looking at a higher target, and we'll look at what proposals come in that would potentially enable us to retire additional fossil fuel units to the extent that we receive quality, cost-effective bids that meet the needs, the grid needs, and other our planning objectives. So our plan and the target in the RFP is to have these projects in service by the end of 2027 or earlier. But we do recognize that for some types of firm technologies in particular, there is a longer development period required. And so if 2027 is not achievable for these firm projects, we're allowing them to propose a later guaranteed commercial operation date. And for these firm projects also, we're specifying that each of them will have a contract length of 30 years. The next slide, please, Shana. So like I said, this RFP, and especially the capacity replacement that we're seeking, they'll support the retirement of existing fossil fuel generators on Maui. And so, we've talked, for a long time about the need to retire Kahului power plant. And so that it'll be really a mix of just RFP results, the projects that we procured in our recent RFP, stage 1, that went out back in 2018, stage 2 in 2019 and 2020. So it'll really be a portfolio of all the projects that we're procuring that will replace Kahului and potentially other fossil fuel generators as we move forward. Next slide, please. So speaking, directly about the RFP and the requirements and considerations here, just to highlight a few key considerations. As always, and as has been our practice, this RFP is going to be, we'll use a multi-stage evaluation process with a review first of eligibility and threshold criteria, and then followed by a separate initial price and non-price evaluation. After certain projects are selected to a priority list, they'll have the opportunity to provide a best and final offer to lower their price, and then those best and final prices will be considered in a subsequent detailed evaluation. I want to stress here that performance standards, especially as we're looking to replace firm generation units, they're essential. We're no longer just seeking more energy for the system on Maui. Some other things that I'd like to point out in this RFP, or in these stage 3 RFPs in general, that we're implementing a new non-price evaluation criteria that addresses carbon. And that's really in line with our commitment to reduce carbon emissions. We've also implemented a new land use and impervious cover criteria, which Colton talked about a little bit earlier. And we've also, further updated and improved our community outreach requirements, including requiring for the first time a community benefits package. In addition, there will be a fuel storage requirement for firm projects. And as always, in our RFPs, we will have an independent observer reporting to the commission who will oversee the process from start to finish. So next slide, please. So talking, in more detail about community outreach. So as one part of the RFP proposal, developers are required to submit a detailed community outreach plan that includes description of the project, community scoping, project benefits, required government approvals, the proposed development process, and the communications plan. So an improvement that we've made over the years is that we make this outreach plan a public document. And so this is something that Mahina and her team will evaluate. And only those projects that meet or exceed the RFP criteria will be allowed to move forward in the process. And after a project is selected, they're awarded the final award group. The developer then required to update and then actually implement that community outreach plan, with the required elements shown here on the slide. So that's something that's really improved and become more defined, over the years. And then speaking specifically to the community benefits requirement, which is new in these stage 3 RFPs. So what we're asking for at a minimum is a commitment for each project to set aside at least $3,000 per megawatt, or a maximum of capped at a minimum maximum of $200,000 per year for community benefits. This requirement was added after discussions in different community meetings across the state held for primarily for the community-based renewable energy RFPs. And this is also things that we're taking this from other things that we've heard from different feedback from our stage 1 to stage 2 RFPs. So these funds, as part of this community benefits package, will be donated for actions or programs aimed at addressing specific needs identified by the host community or to a 501c3 nonprofit community-based organization or organizations that will directly address host community identified needs. So another requirement is going to be the documented community benefits package, including highlighting the distribution of funds. It's something that needs to be developed and will be made public. It will be required to be made public on each of the project proposers' websites. The benefits package is also going to require inclusion of documentation of the consultation that the project proposers done in the community and the process for collecting input. And so we're intending that this is how this payment is made. It's flexible, either through an upfront payment for community benefits or annual installments, like I talked about, over the life of the contract or the PPA. And so, we're requiring that the first contribution must be made in support of the host community, no later than the end of the first year of the PPA. So we want this to be done in a thoughtful way, and we want the benefits to start to flow to the communities, in line with when the project is in service. Okay, next slide, please. So two of the other evaluation criteria that Colton touched on earlier and that I mentioned real briefly a couple of slides up were also developed as part of discussions with stakeholders. And so like I mentioned, this carbon emissions evaluation is in line with the company's goal to reduce carbon emissions by 70% from 2005 levels by 2030. So what we've done is we've developed a questionnaire which will be used to score each project depending on the project specific design, siting, procurement plans, construction, or other O&M information, things that will likely impact the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions for each project. Then the land use criterion was developed to give some preference for projects, not sited in agricultural land or land that's not already been developed. Next slide, please. So now talking about process, and as we work together to meet both the clean energy and decarbonization goals that both the state and the company have, it's important that we do our best to choose the resources that will best meet the needs of both the utility and the community. So we're committed to following a very comprehensive information gathering process, and we do our best to ensure that questions and concerns are adequately addressed before a decision is made. So this process, it can be lengthy, but we feel like it's the balance and it's the right thing to do. And so this chart that I'm showing here, it shows where we are right now in the process. And so we're still very, very early in the stage 3 process, at least, noted by the orange arrow on the very top left side. So we've submitted our draft request for proposals to the PUC on May 2nd. And so after collecting feedback and input, and we're asking for comments by June 2nd, we'll revise the draft and submit a proposed final draft to the commission for their review and approval. And after we issue the final RFP, we'll have a thorough evaluation process to ensure proposals meet all the requirements set forth in the RFP. And so after the final project selected, we'll be in contract negotiations with the winning bidder, and then the contract, what we call power purchase agreement, will be submitted to the PUC for approval. So that's the schedule, as we proposed it right now. We're still very, only on the second step here at the community meeting. So there's a lot more steps in the process. And I will note that the dates here there are proposed dates, and depending on when and how the commission acts, some of these dates may be adjusted somewhat. But we're anticipating, if we receive comments by June 2nd, that we'll be able to have a next draft by the middle of July. And so, in line with that schedule, we're planning to come back to you folks and have a follow-up community meeting, sometime in July before we make that next filing. And sorry, Shane, if you can go back one slide real quick. So going back here, this is sort of a different way to show the steps. Just want to note and really highlight the opportunities for feedback to be provided during the process. Now as we're developing, and so really looking for feedback now. But also, if you note where the other orange stars are on this slide. So during the contract negotiation period, the developer will have public meetings, so that's the opportunity. And then also after the contract is signed and submitted to the PUC for approval, during that review and approval process, there's sort of formal opportunity to provide comments and feedback as well. Thanks. Okay, we can go back. Right. So we're hoping to be, if we select, roughly on this schedule here, we're hoping to issue the RFP, by the end of August, and then that would lead to selection of projects by next August, the beginning of next August, 2023. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So again, I'm showing this in several different ways, but engagement with the communities, like you folks, is very important to us. And so this slide shows the formal opportunities available at each step of the process, starting right now, early on, where we are today, where the RFP is still in draft form. And so even after the PUC process is finished and the opportunity to submit written comments is passed, depending on the permitting required, through those approval processes, there'll be different opportunities to provide feedback on the project as well. So this is the theme here is we want your feedback and we want your comments, and so how to do that. So there's several ways that we can submit your thoughts and your feedback. And you can always send this directly to us, to Hawaiian Electric, at the email address specifically for this RFP. So up here on the screen, Maui Renewable RFP at hawaiianelectric.com. You can also submit comments directly to the PUC via email at hawaii.puc@hawaii.gov. And the PUC also has a comment form on their website. And so if you note that the docket for this RFP, for these RFPs is 2017-0352, and you can target your comment to that docket through the PUC website. And so just to keep on schedule and to keep the RFP process moving, we're requesting that comments be submitted either to the PUC to be shared publicly or directly to the company by June 2nd, which is roughly 30 days after this draft was filed. So next steps. So as we move into the summer, the company is planning to host a technical conference. This is something, and I think it's June 15th is the date that we penciled in the schedule, but that can change depending on how the PUC acts. But this technical conference is a meeting that's an opportunity, more for developers and other interested parties to learn and ask questions about, more of the technical details and aspects of both the RFP and the contracts. But anyone is invited and welcome to attend. But the focus of that meeting is just a little bit different. And so during that time, the company will be collecting and will be reviewing public comments. The draft RFP that we filed on May 2nd is available for review on our website here on the screen, hawaiianelectric.com /competitive bidding to look for the Maui Stage 3 RFP. And then per our schedule, we're targeting to file, take those comments in incorporate whatever feedback we're able to incorporate, and we are targeting to file the final RFP by the end of August of this year. And so that date, of course, subject to PUC approval. So there's quite a lot to do as we move through the summer, but as always, our team is up for the challenge.
Oh, I think that's
I'll turn that back to Mahina. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. So tonight is not just about us sharing information on this RFP for Maui. We also want to help answer questions and hear any comments that folks would like to share. Besides having Colton and Greg here to help with questions, we've also asked Bob Eisler, our Vice President of Power Supply for Hawaiian Electric, to join us for this segment. So there are different ways to ask a question or submit comments. You can see it on the screen by email. You can email your question to Maui Renewable RFP at hawaiianelectric.com, especially if you're watching via Akaku. And if you're joining us on Facebook Live, just post a comment in the comment box located under the meeting. And if you want to speak in our online through the Microsoft Teams platform or by phone, you can use the raise hand feature to speak. And by phone, just press *6 to unmute. I'll do my best to make sure that we can answer any questions in the order we receive. We'll try to get to all the questions during this meeting. And if we don't get to it, or you think of one later after the meeting is over, then just email us at the Maui Renewable RFP at hawaiianelectric.com, and we'll get back to you. So that more folks in our community can watch, we're also broadcasting live on Akaku. So this means that we'll need to end at 7 o'clock tonight so that Akaku can proceed with their scheduled programming. Let's begin with the questions that have come through, and we'll make our way through them. I see some in the chat here. I'm going to read them and direct them to our folks here, our team, who can best help. So this is from Alex who happens to be our Maui County Energy Commissioner. And I think this is a good one for Colton, if you can help us. There are two questions, actually. You probably can see them in the chat box as well. Alex wants to know, how about innovative ways to firm up variable renewables, such as pump hydro storage, gravity energy storage, hydrogen production? I'm going to read them out loud because I know there are some folks by phone and they may not have access to the chat box. Colton, could you help with that one?
Sure, and thank you, Alex, for joining us here tonight. Not only is Alex the Maui County Energy Commissioner, he's also a very engaged, consistent member of our IGP Stakeholder Council. So thank you, Alex, for joining us tonight. So on the question about ways to firm up variable generation, absolutely that is a resource or paired resource that can be part of the variable renewable generation, or what I think a slide referred to as the RDG portion. But I do want to note the very end of your listing here, you included hydrogen. If there is a resource that is using a renewably produced hydrogen as a fuel to then generate electricity, then that resource, that generator, could be eligible for the firm RFP component. But definitely storage can be part of the variable, but storage paired with a variable renewable generator, because it still would be energy limited, would be eligible for that portion of our procurement, and not for the firm component, which kind of gets into your next question. Do you want to read it, Mahina?
Sure. So it continues on. He says there's a minimum 180 gigawatt hours of variable RDG versus 40 megawatt of firm. So for layman, you may want to help translate that, Colton. It would be good to present these in equivalent units so that they are easier to compare and understand.
Yeah, so it's really great observation by Alex. We are using different units to describe what we're seeking as part of these two components of our RFP. And the reason we're using different units of measure is really because we're seeking different qualities, right? Different services from these resources for the grid. So for the renewable variable RDG component, we're really looking for competitive, useful, renewable energy. And that's why it's expressed in terms of, in this case, 180 gigawatt hours of energy. For the firm component, we really focused on getting capacity from a renewable resource. Capacity is the ability for a resource to provide power at any given time that it's demanded of the system. So we're looking for 30 to 40 megawatts of power available on demand. And the amount of energy or renewable energy that resource produce will be a function on the dispatch of that resource, not necessarily targeting a certain amount of energy per year. That's not really what we're looking for as a good service from that firm generator. So that's why we're using two different units of measure, because we're really looking for two different set of qualities.
Thank you, Colton. I have 3 RFP specific related questions that I'm gonna give to Greg. But before I do, I just want to remind folks that you can use whatever you see on screen, email your question, put it in a comment box on Facebook page. And if you're on by phone or by computer, we ask that you mute your laptop or desktop and your phone until you want to ask a question. So this one, Greg, if you can help us out, it says, are there any contingency, or is there any contingency flexibility in this stage 3 RFP for supply chain disruptions and inflationary pressures that could affect the ability of independent power producers to follow through with their proposals? Greg?
Sure, thanks. And that's a very relevant question that we're dealing with today. So there are a couple of things that we're proposing that we're hoping are going to help with these kind of concerns. And so one of the big things that we did was in these RFPs, we added a provision that allows for a one-time price adjustment based on an index from the time that the proposal submitted to the time that the PUC ultimately approves the project. And so that's intended to capture some of the inflationary changes that may happen at that time between when the bid's prepared and when the project's actually approved. The second thing that we've done is we've removed the non-price criteria, incentivizing earlier guaranteed commercial operations date. So that while we still want projects to be completed and done as soon as possible, removing this criteria, we thought, will allow developers to be able to set more realistic schedules, and that we're not incentivizing them wrongly maybe to overbid over aggressive GCODs that they think that'll meet our needs.
Thanks, Greg. The next question, RFP related, is there a minimum number of community meetings and frequency and format of these community meetings as part of the RFP requirements? For example, could one developer hold one single community meeting, whereas another could hold multiple or 10 community meetings? Greg?
Sure. So our community outreach requirements are, not specific in terms of number, but they're, we do preference greater and more comprehensive outreach. We do ask that we ask to see what kind of outreach has been done upfront, and then we do actually require at least one community meeting after the upon selection, the first community meeting. But we do encourage all developers to be out talking to people as early and as often as possible.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Another question for you, Greg. In terms of carbon reduction, not all renewable energy technologies are created equal. How does the RFP distinguish between carbon intensity of various technology options from both a local carbon impact as well as from a life cycle assessment analysis or LCA perspective for either Greg or Colton?
So, I think we recognize that different technologies have different potentially have different levels of life cycle greenhouse gas impacts. And so we're trying to take that into account to some extent, at least, through this criteria. But we recognize, there's limits to that because we're not able to to do a full life cycle greenhouse gas assessment, at the time of bidding. There's a lot of components of a project that are not known at that time, or that could change from that time until an actual construction. So we do our best to through the questionnaire get as much information as we can about what those impacts may be and how to differentiate a project from a different project.
Great, thank you, Greg. I see a question that also came up. It says, perhaps Bob or Colton, you could answer this one. Why can't we just put PV solar panels on everyone's rooftops instead of large-scale renewable projects?
Sure, I'll take that one, Mahina. Thanks for that question. Really, we need to think about our energy future and our achievement of a net zero decarbonized future and 100% renewable future for Maui, looking at the use of both distributed rooftop renewable systems like rooftop solar and larger community and grid scale resources. We don't think we can get there only with one from a volume amount to reach these goals. And definitely we can't get there and do so in a cost-effective and reliable way, or as cost-effective and as reliable with the use of just one technology. If it's solar around all of our homes, we really need that portfolio of resources to help ensure that renewable energy and the power from these systems are available during the daytime, during the night, during sunny weather, during cloudy weather, and to all customers, not just for those customers where those rooftop systems are located. So that's why we really need both.
Great, thank you, Colton. I see a question coming in from Facebook, from our Facebook audience, and thank you all for tuning in. The question is, will the RFP include power storage as well as renewable generation? Greg?
Yes, so the RFP is open to both, right? To standalone storage as well as paired storage in the RFP. We're doing some analysis about how we would use standalone storage, but we're open to both paired and as well as standalone.
Thank you. Let's go back to the chat questions. Greg, this is for you from Alex. Are questions submitted today considered submitted public comments for the RFP?
Alex, if I'm understanding your question, we're considering that comments that we're taking into account. And I think we'll post the recording of this meeting on our website. It'll be available for public review. But in terms of the comment being part of the docketed record, then that would be comments submitted to the PUC, and they'll become a part of that record in that docket. But for our purposes, we're considering all of this as public comment that we'll take into consideration.
Okay, great. Thank you, Greg. And Alex, if you want us to expand on that, just let us know. Here's a question from Dick Mayer. There is a need to include lands with an agricultural designation of E, in addition to industrial lands, since many of those lands are excellent for solar installations. I'm assuming that's actually a comment, correct, Dick, and not so much a question? And if you want to expand on that, please do so. Dick Mayer also wants us to know that because Maui does not have community boundaries, it will be necessary to define the term community. And does it mean the community plan district or smaller area within the district? And will a form of wheeling be utilized to allow a producer on vacant land to install solar facilities and a distant hotel or shopping center to wheel the electricity from that producer to the consumer? If I could have either Colton or Greg answer the wheeling question.
Yeah, I'll take a swing at the wheeling question, and thank you, Dick, for attending tonight. Appreciate the comments and questions. So the topic of wheeling, which is the idea of generating power in one location and wheeling the power and the benefits of that power to a location separate from where the power is generated and to a specific location rather than to an entire electric system. And so Dick's question about whether wheeling will be utilized. So for this RFP, we're looking for renewable resources that can be connected to the grid and that can be used by and benefit all of our customers on the island of Maui. But we continue to speak and discuss wheeling on an ongoing basis, separate from a procurement. It comes up every year in state legislation, almost every year, if not every year. And we take a look at it from the perspective of, can this be done in a way that allows for the intended benefits to happen at the same time, provide a fair impact to those who are not part of a wheeling arrangement. And so I think that's something that's right for a continued discussion. But right now, wheeling is not a regulatory mechanism in place today, and it's not part of this Stage 3 RFP.
Thank you, Colton. I see Dick Mayer's hand up. Go ahead, Dick.
Yeah. It would seem that if wheeling is not allowed, the community-based renewable energy proposals would not work, since many of them combine a producer with wind or solar to sell it to a shopping center or industrial warehouse or a hotel. So how can you have CBRE without any kind of wheeling?
Yeah, no, I was debating whether I should get into that, but it's a great question, Dick. So community-based renewable energy or shared solar is similar in concept, where we're looking to create opportunities for people to subscribe for the benefits of a renewable system that may not be located at the same place that they are located. But it does it through an arrangement of subscription to that particular facility versus wheeling the power from one place to another. And there are some subtle but I think important differences between the two mechanisms. Greg, anything you want to add on that distinction?
No, other than just those are two different efforts that we're making as a company. That shared solar is a program that we're doing, and the RFP it's RFP as well, but it's for purposes of that program. Different from seeking to meet the grid needs that we're looking to address here. And then, Dick, I did want to clarify, I think maybe your first comment here about in the land use criteria about including agricultural Class E lands. The intent of that criteria was to not penalize or not including Class E land was not that we're not allowing them to be used or anything like that. It's just that we wanted to give more credit to land already with impervious cover or land that industrial or mixed use or commercial type zoning already, just to prioritize moving away from agriculture. But there's no penalty or no prohibition from using agricultural land. So if that's a helpful clarification to make there.
Except that agricultural land is much cheaper. Industrial land is potentially much more expensive, and you're putting a barrier up by requiring industrial or giving it a higher value than using unused slopes of Haleakala in the dry area, but very sunny. No cattle can grow there, can be raised there, and it would be an excellent place.
Sure, no, understood. I think the intent was not that it'd be a barrier; it's just that it would be some priority for some creative uses of other types of land.
I'll move on. I'll let others go.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Greg, for that extended answer. Here's a question we're getting. Greg, this may be for you. How are locations for renewable energy projects determined?
Sure. So we're very open in this RFP, and similar to our previous ones, for the locations to be determined by the proposer. I think generally the developer proposers have a very extensive process that they use to select sites that are optimal, for lots of different reasons, for availability and quality of resource for like a PV or a wind facility, or just permitting other locational characteristics. And so part of that consideration, of course, is the host community that they're in, and so we expect that due diligence is done there. But we leave that initial finding of locations to the developers, and we'll do the evaluation based on what they submit.
Great, thank you, Greg. This next question is, I think Bob, you can help us with this one. Do the power plants currently use biodiesel?
Yeah, if we're talking about the existing power plants on Maui, then the answer is very little. We use a little bit of biodiesel at Malaya to start up some units, but otherwise, no, we do not.
Great. Thank you, Bob. I'm going to pause a little bit and offer some time for folks to ask more questions. And again, you can email us and also do it by Facebook, by phone, or in the chat box here. Oh, here's a question that just came in. Will renewable energy projects lower my electricity bill? I'm going to let that one be a toss-up for Greg Colton.
Sure. Sorry, took me a while to get the mute button. Yeah, so the intent here, the real objective here is to see if we can procure renewable energy with the right services to the grid at the lowest cost that we can. Our hope is that that energy and capacity can provide at a cost lower than if we were to have to procure it from a conventional fossil generator, or to continue the use of or higher dispatch of an existing fossil generator. So to that extent, we're looking as an objective to lower the cost of running our generation system. Whether that translates into a lower electricity bill is going to be challenged, by the fact that the remaining parts of our generation system will still have a component that will be fossil fuel, and that pricing can vary, and as we experience, can increase quite rapidly. So our intent is to procure resources that are lower in costs to operate, that will benefit our customers, hopefully lower bills, but at minimum, reduce the impact of rising fossil fuel prices and their volatility as well.
Thank you, Colton. A question from Tina in the chat box. Will we be posting this meeting recording on our website? And what is the deadline for public comments to RFP? And you can see here the comments are requested by June 2nd of this year. It's quite a short turnaround, but we would really like folks to comment there. And this is how you can do it. Email us at mauirenewablerfp@hawaiianelectric.com or hawaii.puc@hawaii.gov. If you do go through the Commission's website, just use a comment form on the public comments page, and the reference is docket 2017-2017-0352, and you see it on your screen here as well if you want to jot that down. But this recording will be available on our website, so you can always refer back to it for that information on where to direct your questions to. Thank you, Tina, for that.
Just want to clarify too, Mahina, if I may. We'll still take comments anytime, after June 2nd, but that date is requested just so that we can, digest and incorporate what we can, and then, reflect that if we're able into the next draft, and to be able to keep moving along with the progression of the development of the RFP.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Dick, for our next question. The question is, will demand-side management to reduce needed electricity consumption be allowed with these requests for proposals? For example, installing solar hot water heating systems on the thousands of Ohana units on Maui that do not have them. And let's see, I'm not sure, gentlemen. Colton?
I'll take it. Yeah, thank you. Thanks again, Dick. Yeah, so we are seeking demand-side resources, but not as part of this RFP. The contracting mechanisms, the services we're looking from those resources are really different, and so we have conducted separate procurements to obtain functions from demand response resources.
Great, thank you. I don't see any additional questions coming in by email, Facebook, or the chat box, but I do want to give folks just a moment to do that. Or for those who have asked questions, Tina, Dick, Alex, and others, if we need to expand on any of those, we certainly have time. We've allotted enough. We've been at it for about an hour. We're not going anywhere until Akaku tells us they have to get back to their broadcasting schedule. So if there are other questions, whether it be RFP related, as we've been covering tonight, or just a question that someone may have about Hawaiian Electric or about our system. A question from Edward Maddox. Thank you for joining us. Will comments from the RFP Maui be incorporated across the 3 solicitations that are currently being considered? Greg, that question would be for you.
Yes, so thanks for the question. That's a good question. And yes, to the extent that the comments are applicable, we do intend to bring them across to the other RFPs. The only thing I will note is that for Hawaii Island, that RFP did get started a little bit earlier, and we're a little bit farther along in the process of development for that. So it may be that comments that are received later do not make it into the final version of that RFP. We are preparing to file our proposed final draft in about a week or so. So, but we're always welcome to comments. We're even after these RFPs, we'll be doing more, lots more. So we welcome that at any time.
Great, thank you, Greg. Edward, if you needed more on that, just let us know. I think a question coming in. I do want to say, while we give folks time, is that we'll be posting this on our website, and certainly everyone has so much going on in their lives nowadays and may have missed this exciting and fascinating meeting about a request for proposal by your local electric company. But you want to share it because we all know Maui community, our folks really want to know what's going on. So you can use the link once it's shared, or reach out to us, and we're happy to provide that link that you can email out and folks can watch. Akaku generally also gives us some airing dates for anything that they help us out with, so we'll be able to make those available as well. So if you want to get some popcorn and watch a rerun, it'll be available on Akaku too. Here's a question from Facebook. What has the study of cost, lifetime, and ability to return power at high rates shown about power storage options? Good question. So again, a question from Facebook. What has the study of cost, lifetime, and ability to return power at high rates shown about power storage options? Colton, would you be able to help with that question? Or Greg?
Sure. I'll take a swing, and then I'll invite Greg and maybe even Bob to help with the response. I think if I'm reading this question correctly, what we can say is that through past analyses that we've done and with our recent procurements, we're finding that storage as part of a renewable energy system, and in certain use cases, storage on a standalone basis can provide functions to the grid that's extremely valuable, where those benefits to the system can really exceed the cost of getting into a contract or building a battery storage system. And so we've taken advantage of that in our stage 1 and then our stage 2 RFPs by awarding to projects with storage. That may not necessarily be a conclusion that's going to continue over time. I think as we all have read in the paper and seen on TV that battery pricing in particular has been quite volatile of late and has increased quite a bit. And at the same time, as you add that next tranche of storage onto a grid, and we're already planning for quite a bit on Maui with the stage 1 and stage 2 projects, that benefit to the grid of that next chunk of energy storage, especially shorter duration storage like battery systems, does not give you the same value as, say, that first chunk that you added of the same size. So we're going to always need to consider all of our options, look at how a technology like storage, including batteries, how that benefits the system over time.
Thank you, Colton. Here's a question in the chat box from Rob. Besides the RFP now under discussion, there are other ideas being floated about how to be able to retire the fossil fuel plants, including a battery plus program like the one they have on Oahu, upgrading the grid so it can make use of more rooftop solar in parts of the island currently maxed out, and to reduce the amount of curtailment of wind power. So if not in the RFP, how are they being carried forward? Colton, can you help us with that one?
Sure. So Rob is referring to the battery bonus program. It's also called the scheduled dispatch program, so you see both names. We actually just received approval from the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission to proceed with that. As Rob's comment notes, it's not part of this RFP. The battery bonus program is really a regulated tariff program. So there's specific set terms, and individual customers can participate, add a system, add storage, provide that scheduled dispatch back to the grid during the evening based upon participation in a program. They don't have to go through a competitive procurement to see if they, and place a bid to see if they are part of what gets built. So that's being done in parallel with our procurements.
Thank you, Colton. If there are no more questions coming through, I'm actually going to give just a few more minutes. Again, I want to remind folks that you can raise your hand, you can do any of the things you see on screen, email us a question. We're trying to be as accessible as possible. And given that we're not meeting in person, trying to find our way and navigate through this modern day technology, and somehow still being able to meet with folks and share out the important information that would eventually impact our island of Maui. Other than that, we will have this recording on our website, and including all the questions that were asked this evening. And if you need additional information, you can also use the email you see on your screen. For those not looking at the screen, it's Maui Renewable RFP at hawaiianelectric.com. I've said it like about 1,000 times tonight, so now I'm going to think about that all night long, but Maui Renewable RFP at hawaiianelectric.com. So I'm checking for one last run. We've been at it for about an hour now. I appreciate the team of Colton Ching, Greg Chimokawa, and Bob Eisler making themselves available for this. Oh, here's a question. It just popped up in the chat from Albert. The number of community meetings can be easily measured, but accommodation of community concerns seems to vary. So do we have a way of measuring or monitoring that? And I'm assuming the community concerns related to an RFP as people offer them. Greg, can you help us with that?
Sure. So I think if I'm understanding the question, it's a combination of concerns for a particular project. And so, it's hard to anticipate what those things may play out over the course of development. But I think by requiring and asking for as much upfront engagement and feedback as we do, we really want the projects to flesh out any of these types of concerns or issues, early on in the process, so that they're able to address them, and so that they'll ideally come up, before the projects are submitted, even ideally, or before they make their way through the full evaluation process. But understand that if they're unaddressed and we get all the way to the end, that's not an ideal situation to be.
Great, thank you, Greg. And I do want, for the record, Albert also expands his question to a comment that if it is not adequately addressed, it could lead to litigation and other delays. Thank you, Albert. There's a question that came in also. I'm going to find it again. Greg, I believe this one is for you. How do you encourage new independent power producers when the order of curtailment is not advantageous to those power producers?
Sure. So I think this is a good time to clarify what we're looking for and sort of the contracting that we use here. So understanding and recognizing that curtailment is not an ideal place to be. So the contract that we're using, that we've put out, it was with our stage 1 RFPs a few years ago. It's a dispatchable generation contract, which means that what we pay for is the company's ability to dispatch the project as the system needs it, and the compensation is a lump sum payment, and that's based on availability of the project whenever we call on it. So very different from a traditional as available contract,
upgrade or maintain,
where there's curtailment or risk or compensation for curtailed energy. This gives the utility the flexibility to use that energy whenever it's best needed.
Great, thank you for that. I see one more question coming in, and I'm just waiting for it to pop up. You can tell when someone's typing in quickly. And again, we want to invite you to ask us by email. We still have time, so definitely here to answer the questions. The question from Facebook is, I'm sorry, that's not the question. It's in chat. Is there any contingency flexibility in the current stage 3 RFP for supply chain disruption? And did I already read that? Hang on a second. I think we did cover that. Okay, here we go. From our friend Dick. Since you're not able to upgrade or maintain the Maui diesel plants, will you be decommissioning them and removing them from the island?
So
if
we cannot get the parts that we need to maintain those units, we will decommission them, and then we'll. We actually haven't thought a lot about disposition of them, but they'd have to be taken care of somehow, and we'd have to have discussions about how to do that.
Okay. All right. Let's see if there are other questions. Here we go from Danny via Facebook. Can we clarify his question earlier asked about what the study of cost, lifetime, and ability to return power at high rates shown about power storage options? Can we ask Daniel Grantham, are you able to hit your unmute button and maybe expand on your question a little bit? I can see you here, unless your button does it. That was an earlier question about the studies regarding cost, lifetime, and ability to return power at high rate shown about power storage options. But looks like there's a need to clarify a question earlier asked. We just want a little bit more clarification on that one. Daniel, I'm going to give you a chance to unmute if you'd like to go ahead and jump on. Okay. All right. I see that you're unable to unmute from Teams, but you can comment on Facebook. Okay. We will give it a moment to see if we can figure that part out. And Daniel, if we have answered your questions correctly that you posted on Facebook, let us know. If there's something else that we can do more on that one. Please type that into the Facebook comment box, and we'll do our best to do that. I sure am looking forward to a time where we can all meet in person and we can just see each other and not have to finagle with buttons and mute and unmute and look for people on the little screen. So one day soon, I'm sure we'll get to that. Until then, we'll do it this way, best way we can. So I'm going to check with our team for one last shot at any of our questions via email. You see it on your screen, via Facebook, use your comment box. I want to mahalo our team, our folks behind the scenes, trying to help us navigate through this. But if you're joining us virtually on the Teams platform, please click the raise hand, come on camera and ask your question if you want to. Otherwise, by phone. If we haven't been able to answer it fully or you have additional questions, we can follow up later. We can also, we certainly welcome your questions and emails at a later date and can address them then. I see another question coming in. Oh, please bear with us. You know how you're seeing someone type and you're waiting to see if it comes through. Okay. All right. So we're going to do a last call. Oh, here's a question. Are there other options besides batteries? This is a question from Daniel. Okay. So besides batteries, is Hawaiian Electric considering other options with regards to the RFP? Greg, would you like to answer that, or Colton, from the planning perspective?
Sure, I can start with that, and maybe Colton can jump in. So we're not strictly only looking for battery solutions, but I think for purposes of this RFP and to ensure that we do get the storage performance that we need, any kind of technology, storage or generation or otherwise, it needs to be developed and mature enough at a commercial level to give us confidence that we can rely on it. So if there's some technology that's being proposed, we'll take a look at it and make an assessment of whether it's commercial or not.
Great, thank you, Greg. And Daniel, I hope that was helpful in answering that. Please know that we can certainly reach out to you, or you can reach us at a post-meeting time to see if there's more we can provide for that. Okay, at this time, we're going to do a last run for questions and give it a moment. We've had some good ones. We've tried to cover the best way we can, and we know we're heavy on our technical language. So if there's something that didn't come through in layman's terms, feel free to clarify and ask us to translate it for you or expand on it in a way that's more helpful. A question that came through is, we've already asked that question from Dick Baer with regards to our Maui diesel plants. Let's see. Any further questions? Okay. Then we are going to go ahead and give folks back their evening. And just before we do, I just wanted to offer a chance to our folks here before we close, to invite Colton, Greg, or Bob if they want to share anything else that we may have missed commenting on or expanding on this evening. Any last thoughts from you folks?
Yeah, just a few comments as we say goodnight. Like Mahina mentioned, we wish we could be doing this in person. Technology is great, but it's still a little clunky. So we're really looking forward to the day when we can do meetings like this in the auditorium at Kahului or at other venues where we can all gather. But notwithstanding all of the challenges with doing this by technology, I'm just really happy and grateful that there's a lot of participation tonight. I think more than some of the other islands in which we've had similar meetings. So I just want to thank all of you for taking that time out of your day to participate. Really, really appreciate this feedback.
Thank you, Colton. Bob or Greg, any last final thoughts? Bob says no. Great.
Just to echo our, my appreciation for everyone's time and engagement. It's a lot, and we, seems like we come talk to you often about, endless RFPs and different things. But we're partners in all of this, and so this conversation and this relationship is very important to us.
Great. Well, we're Maui. We're very inquisitive. But again, I do want to remind everyone to share the information. We deliberately allowed for it to be recorded and intentionally made sure that it was something that folks could watch if they missed tonight's meeting. So please share that out. And if you have further questions that we can help with, we absolutely are here to help. Want to mahalo everyone for joining us tonight, not just our Hawaiian Electric team that you see before you, but also those, behind the scenes helping us navigate tonight. But we'd also like to thank you for your time. Mahalo nui to Akaku, our community television station, for always being at our side as we try to be as flexible and available as possible to our communities here. But we value everyone's time and interest and appreciate that you're here with us virtually tonight. And we absolutely look forward to when we can see everyone again in person at our future community meetings, where in those meetings, we'll even have food and refreshments for you. This way it's virtual, so I'm very sorry about that, but that's the life we live today temporarily. And just a reminder again, if you want to send us a question after tonight, or your questions didn't get answered this way that you're hoping for, please email us at mauirenewablerfp@hawaiianelectric.com. You can also provide comments on the draft request for our proposal after Hawaiian Electric files it with the Public Utilities Commission. And as always, we look forward to continuing our work with all of you at your side together for the benefits of our islands across Hawaii. Have a great evening, everyone. Mahalo nui and aloha.